Railway Conversations with Doc Frank.
Hello and welcome to another Railway Conversation with Doc Frank. I'm your host of this podcast, Doc Frank, and my guest today is Ivan Ristic from Belgrade in Serbia. That's in Eastern Europe, for those of you who don't know. We're talking about the Eastern European signaling market and also about the way that he created and built up his company and how he keeps flexible between the resources he's got and the demand for those resources. All up, a very interesting talk to a person from a region that you may not hear of that often. I hope you enjoy. Hi, it's Doc Frank here. Real quick, I want to let you know about one of the best CBTC trainings in the world, if not the very best, but you always need to be careful with superlatives. It's the CBTC Kickstarter online course. It consists of 30 video lessons. That's the 3 with the 0. In total, over 11 hours of training content, talking about everything from the basics of CBTC, current standards, the benefits of CBTC, the key functionality of it, the supply industry, application tips and tricks, lessons learned, do's and don'ts, case studies, arguably the most comprehensive training that you can find anywhere on the topic of CBTC. A few additional things that make learning easier for you that you may not find on any other online courses. One of them being an immersion plan that helps guiding you through the training course and progress it in a finite period of time instead of just having it sit there for months and months on end. There is access to an online study group where you can connect with other students who are doing that training course at the time and form learning groups. There will be live coaching calls once every 2 weeks. And after the training, you will not be on your own. There is an alumni community that allows you to ask questions about the course content on an ongoing basis. So it's basically education for life. You can inform yourself about this training course and register to it on my training portal, which is docfranktraining.podia.com/CBTC Kickstarter -online 2023. I repeat that, docfranktraining.podia.com/CBTC Kickstarter -online 2023. I look forward to seeing you at that training. And until then, please enjoy my upcoming episode of this podcast. Ivan, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Doc. Thank you for the invitation. It is really great pleasure for me to participate in this, let's say, already elite events from your web podcast, and I'm really grateful for invitation. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm not sure whether it's still an elite event at this point in time, but I hope we're getting there slowly but surely, one listener at a time or one viewer at a time for those of you who are watching this on YouTube. We know each other from LinkedIn. You have been an avid follower of my posts and my contents, and you're probably one of the people who comment most and like posts from me and so on, and that just caught my attention, and then we came into a little bit of a conversation. For everybody out there, and also for my own background, because I don't know too much about you personally, can you explain a little bit how your career went in the railway industry, which led you to your current position?
Yes. Okay. I now think like 25 years in the railway industry, especially in signaling. I started in mid-1990s in the company called the Institute of Transportation, CIP, which was my first employment after the graduation. And although I am the telecommunication engineer, somehow I ended up on the signaling field as a specialty. which proved to be very good. And I got the opportunity to learn these technologies, because here we don't have some formal education on the studies. So more or less I started from the scratch, and gradually in the CIP Institute I was 16 years. So step by step, with a lot of projects, I gained some, let's say, first knowledge, and then deeply introduced, and so on. And it was lucky that this period also coincides with the emerging of new technologies in 2000s, like electronic interlockings and later ETCS and so on. So let's say my beginning was overlapping with these technological leaps in signaling. Then my second employment was in the COVI branch here in Serbia, where I also had a chance to work on some international projects. For example, I was working in a project in Tanzania, in Africa. It was 9 years ago, but very interesting. So it was also a signaling project for these two sections of the railway line. And this was, let's say, interesting international experience. Also then started to working on other European projects. And then after 4 years in COVI, I decided to go on my own way. So last 5 years, I'm in the company called Signaling Solutions, where I am the managing director and one of the experts. And we are, let's say, primarily based in railway signaling and telecommunications area here. And maybe I can say a little more about the company for introduction. So we are based in Serbia, but generally we also operate in other countries here in the region of Western Balkans, like Montenegro, Bosnia and Herzegovina, North Macedonia, Croatia. And we are mostly engaged in the design of different signaling and telecom systems. And also in the last few years, we are participating in the supervision on several important projects. So more or less everything except the construction works we cover. Also different expertise like certifications of some devices and so on. And that is roughly our field of activity currently and here in this region. Okay. So this would be some kind of quick introduction. Yeah. Myself, my career, and the company where I'm now.
How big is the company now? It's there for 5 years, you said?
Yes. Formally, we have 2 permanent employees, but we have like 10 pool of around 10 experts from the signaling and telecom who are also freelancers. But they usually work exclusively with us. So like we have 12 people here, more or less, available for different projects. Which is significant for this region because we have in the Serbia and in the whole region is a big demand for the signaling and railway signaling and telecom engineers. So I think there are other companies, but they also have limited resources, and therefore I think this our pool is quite good, and these are mostly younger people who are still, ready to work and ready to learn, which is now very necessary in this field. So basically, this is the structure. But these people usually work also for other companies. So it's hard to someone gain to be employed just for you. But of course, they want always to cooperate with us on different projects.
Yeah, I think the most difficult bit is to have the right balance between how many people you need for projects at a certain point in time and how many people you've got on your books. And,
Yes.
and the problem is if you have people on your payroll full time is that you need to keep them busy full time, which is not always that
Yes.
easy. And so having like some freelancers that work for you almost on demand, that helps very much for like breathing. Like if there's more
Yes.
demand, then you can bring more people in relatively quickly. And if there's less demand, then you don't have
Yes.
those
Yes.
people
Yes.
sitting on your books. You can just let them go again. That's it's a concept that
Exactly.
I do myself in my business as well. So both as a subcontractor, if I work for bigger consultancies, then they can use me flexible on demand, which is good because they don't have to have me full time on the payroll. And if they need me, I'm normally quite flexible. And and on the other hand, I had it in the past as well that I used other people to work together with me, especially if my client wanted some work in areas which are not my first specialty. So I brought in, I don't know, telecoms engineers, for example, to help out on telecommunication problems. So yeah, I think it's quite a sensible concept, and I hope it works well for you.
Yes, yes, exactly. It's important that you know that there are people you can count on, when the occasion comes. And then the scheduling and everything else is not so important. You will find the time if you're good organized, but generally it's most important, at least from my point of view, that you have some reliable people you can rely on when and it's usually, by Murphy's Law, either you don't have jobs at all, or you have several at the same time. It's rarely that they are distributed evenly. So in this case, also good planning is very, very important, and scheduling of people. And since they are usually time-based projects, so you need also to balance. It's usually that you have some allocation of time, so that you need to balance with the people, not to overlap on projects and so on. So this is all handled, but if you have the right people, that's important, I think,
Yes.
at the beginning.
So I assume that once you have people that worked with you before, then you're happy to take them back if they did good work, and so that you basically have a pool of resources which are reliable, which have worked with you before. We know their strengths and weaknesses and their areas of specialty and so on. Yeah.
Yes, of course, and just to emphasize, these are not only people from Serbia. We also collaborate with few companies, let's say from Croatia, from Bosnia. So because we have very similar or almost the same signaling rules and the regulations, because we all originate from former Yugoslavia. So in this case, when people from Serbia are not available and there are some short deadlines, then we also cooperate with the other companies. And I think cooperation is very good regionally, because everywhere the resources are limited. So it's good to have also the partners in neighboring countries which can help you in some situations. So we are not relying only on local people from Serbia, but also to the several companies from the other countries. So because generally all projects we use the English as the primary language on most of these international funded projects. So more or less, and we more or less speak the same or similar language. So the communication is not a problem, which is very important we are not lost in some translations and so on, which might be the case on some other international projects.
Yes. Yeah, well, that explains that you speak very, very good English. Yeah, that's very helpful for the podcast.
Yes, thank you.
Within your team, you really communicate mostly on English, or is it more Serbo-Croatian when you talk amongst each other?
Usually on local language, but usually the outputs are prepared parallel in English, and so, but the communication is usually on the local language, internal communication. Of course, if there are some official meetings, then it is usually on English, but internally it's although we have formally 4 different languages, this is more or less the similar one, but officially we have 4 languages derived from this Serbo-Croatian language.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
See, I thought there was just one language for the previous Yugoslavia and
No. We have Croatian, Bosnian, Montenegrin, and Serbian. So 4 languages, and they are more or less similar. Slovenian and Macedonian are different. We can understand, but these are different languages. So basically, these 4 are like one, and there are 2 additional. So we had like 3 officially in former Yugoslavia. Now we have 6 or 7, even depending how you. So, but actually, we can understand each other. That's most important.
Yeah, but it may almost be easier to switch to English than with everybody.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, this is maybe a little political issue with the languages and new states, but the people can understand each other. That's important.
Yeah, I can imagine there was a lot of trouble in the years since Yugoslavia was broken up, which I don't really want to go into in this podcast here, because I don't want it to be a political show. And so when you say you're working with people from other countries, including countries that have been at some time in the past be at war with Serbia, it seems to me that this has kind of sorted itself out now, and people can collaborate again in a sensible manner, which is good.
Yes, exactly.
Tell me a bit about the signaling market there. I mean, obviously the Eastern Europe is a market which is not so much in the limelight. So I know very little about this. I'm originally from Western Europe, from Germany, and I didn't really understand much, and I didn't have much information at all on Eastern European markets. And I could imagine that many of the listeners here don't know much about this either. So can you tell us a little bit about the market there? You said it's basically all coming from one signaling system, which was the former Yugoslavian signaling system. Is that still aligned between the countries, or have this been diverged over time?
Yes, it has been a little diverged. Each of the countries brought its own regulations, but more or less they are very similar still. Maybe Croatia and Slovenia, since they are in European Union, they had to adopt this European Union regulation faster. So maybe they are a little more ahead of the rest of us in these terms, that they already implemented all mandatory EU regulations, including the implementation of ETMS and so on. So in this sense, they might have been advanced, but generally the rules, especially the national rules, are still similar. First, it should be said that the whole former Yugoslavia adopted the German signaling principles. So most of our rule books not only for signaling, but also for other railway systems, were based on the German standards. So this is something that's interesting, and I think from technical point of view, very good, because the time proved that this is a very, very good, let's say, system and legislation. And now all these new countries more or less inherited these basic documents like signaling rule books, traffic regulation rule books. So when you work in one country, it's very similar. Okay, there are some differences, but they're not, significant. So this is also used by the suppliers, for example, when they come in one country and prepare some specific software application, for example, in Serbia, well, it's just small modification. They can use this also in Croatia and Bosnia, because the core regulations are very similar, so you need maybe to have some small adaptations, but once you prepare the specific application software, which is the hardest part, then you can use it with very small changes in all of these countries. So that is very good for these suppliers. And for example, we already have several big suppliers in signaling which are present in all the countries. Like we have, of course, Siemens here in Serbia, and in other countries we have Alstom, we have AŽ Praha from Czech Republic, and they all have installations in 2 or 3 countries, and some even more. So this is good for any prospective suppliers that participating in one state. They potentially already have developed products for several more states, which is good. Unfortunately, up to some 5-6 years ago, the railways, at least here in Serbia, was not in a good state, because there were not too many technological investments, mainly just maintenance. But in the last 5-6 years, there were really big changes and a lot of new projects. So, for example, we now are in the final stage of this first line for high speed from Belgrade to south to the Hungarian border, which is done by the Chinese manufacturers. And now also we are starting the design for the high-speed line from Belgrade to south, which will be financed from the European funds. So also there were also several other big projects for modernization and construction, which were financed by the Russian Federation. Now this is a little bit on the standstill due to the circumstances, but so we have different funding sources and really big projects started, and there will be another project. So now I would say that in the region, Serbia is really the biggest investment field. The Croatia is also using European Union funds for modernization. But in the technological view, for example, they are still not implemented ETCS. That's just in the plans. We have here on this line ETCS level 2. So first 2 sections are already put into operation last year, and now the final one should be completed by the end of this year. And this new line to the south should start very soon. The design is in progress. So last years there is really big, there are big projects also in other countries, not with maybe this scale, but also in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Montenegro. There are some projects of modernization. Also in Macedonia now. They are doing one big project to the Bulgarian border. So I would say that in the whole region, in the last period of 5-6 years, there is really extensive works on the modernization of the railways. And just not to forget, in Belgrade, we should start also a metro project. So this should start very soon. It's a combined investment from the EU and China. So this will be first metro project here in this region. First line in Belgrade, and it's already, the contracts are signed. So they will be, Alstom will supply, let's say, signaling and vehicles, and Chinese supplier will work with civil works and electrification. So they split the job, but this will be also a very big project. This first line, and then the 2 other lines are planned in the future. So, and this will be also first installation of the CBTC, which we have here in the region. So there will be really a lot of projects in the next couple of years here, so which is good. And now we are trying to speed up this modernization on different fields and to let's say, reduce the gap with other European countries which we had in previous years. That's some kind of, so in this sense, of course, I think this market is, because all these suppliers which come, they don't have a complete portfolio of products. They have this main, like interlock and so on, but they are always looking for some additional suppliers especially for the outside equipment, like signals, point machines. We have some producers here in Serbia, some are from other countries. So I think there is a potential market for a lot of suppliers to participate in these different projects which are scheduled in the next few years. So let's say the market is now really interesting for many suppliers, how big one, like big players from Unisig, but also for the smaller suppliers of specific parts of the equipment for signaling and telecom. That is some kind of description what is going on here in the region and in Serbia specifically.
I'm glad you mentioned the high-speed project from Belgrade to the Hungarian border. A few months ago, I learned that this is fitted with ETCS from a Chinese supplier. I think it's CRRC, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And that to me, it was really a surprise. I mean, I knew that CRRC was announcing that they have an ETCS product at the conference. They also have announced that they have a CBTC product. But I didn't really expect that they would do an ETCS project in Europe. I mean, there are ETCS projects in other countries as well, because of the wide support of ETCS by the supply market, the international supply market. Many railway organizations find ETCS very interesting as a technology because they have more competition during the procurement process. And they can choose from a variety of suppliers. So what I'm saying is there would be opportunities for ETCS outside Europe. And for example, here in Australia, we have a range of ETCS projects going on. But I was surprised that a Chinese supplier really got the market entry in Europe. So have you got any touch points to that project? Do you know how this is going?
Yes, of course. I participated personally in this working group by the infrastructure managers who were preparing the user requirements specifications for the ETCS level 2. So I'm familiar with that. And also our company was involved with one partner company in preparing the design for this third section, which is now under the construction. So basically, just first to explain the whole concept of this line. This was not, at least there is a part of the line in Serbia, and also there is a part of the line in the Hungary. So it goes from Belgrade to Budapest. but these are two separate contracts because Hungary is a member of European Union and they need to conduct the procurement according to EU regulations. And as far as I know, they completed this procurement and they have also a consortium where there are Chinese companies, also CRSC, but there is also HD Praha, as I heard, and the Hungarian company Prolan. So they will jointly do the signaling part. But here in Serbia, since we are not part of the EU, we didn't have public procurement, but this was, let's say, a contract between the state governments. So in this way, there was no public competition, but directly awarded contract to the Chinese contract. And that is how they entered this market. But to be honest, I must say that, we had also the notified body and the consultant for testing who conducted complete, monitoring and testing and checking of the product. And for these first two sections, they received approval from notified body and also from the testing consultant, that was DB Sensor Technique. So these first two sections are officially put in operation last year, 2022. And now this third section, which is the longest, is now under the construction, and it should be end by the end of this year, as we heard latest. So basically, this is their first installation in Europe. But they passed all the tests, all the checks, and received, let's say, no objection from the independent bodies as required also for the European countries. And so they have this product complete. So you complete devices like electronic interlocking, radio block center, everything was produced by the CRSC, and mostly the part of the outside equipment was from other suppliers, including some domestic suppliers like signals, like track magnets and so on. So, but they of course conducted the call integration and the safety case and everything, and verified this in front of the notified body. So I would say that now we mark the anniversary in March. It's a year in operation, more than 1 year in operation, the line, and there were no problems. Of course, this is a limited section, but it is really interesting now. I just heard from some friends that you need to wait for the tickets because demand is really big. People didn't have this opportunity before to go. The speed is 200 kilometers per hour, and so you can go between Belgrade and Novi Sad, which are two biggest cities, for half an hour, and really from center of one city to center of the so this is really big demand. Trains are always full, and it's interesting for people because we didn't have these opportunities before. So now for a year and let's say almost 14 months, which there are no any problems with the system. But of course, we expected that now second phase, when it is connected with Hungary, to also receive the Hungarian trains and so on, then it would be more than interesting to see how all these interoperability issues are covered. But this part, which is now is operation, is quite satisfying so far.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to say that once you have the border connection at the Serbian-Hungarian border, that's when it really gets interesting. If somebody else's ETCS is on the other side, on the Hungarian side of the border, and then the Chinese CBTC on the Serbian side, to really see how those work together. And I can remember from my own time in Europe that these cross-border connections were always very challenging. At the time, one of the first cross borders that we had in Europe was between the Netherlands and Belgium, and that was really a big thing, and it was quite celebrated when it finally worked, and it wasn't as easy as one would assume. No?
Yes, I know. We are now just working also in another working group for this part with the colleagues from the Hungarian Railways from MAV to specify the protocol for handing over between the RBCs and everything. So it's now in the development phase. So I know it's challenging, but I think we will manage to because more or less the same contractor is on the other side, which facilitates the transition, but of course it should be specified because Serbian and Hungarian rules are a little different. So now we are considering there are several options how to plan this handover. Will we have overlap or not, or even considering the options for the ETCS level 1 transition. So there are like 3 options which are now on the table, and we are trying to find which is the best technically, and of course which can be easiest implemented. So I know it's not still detailed regulated by TSI. We now also are waiting new TSI CCS, which should be released soon. So to see if there are some significant changes which might happen. But this is a challenge, definitely, this cross-border, since this is our first ETCS project and we didn't have such experience as you mentioned. So it will be a challenge to complete this part.
I was first smiling when you mentioned one of the options would be to transition down to level 1 and then behind the border transition up to level 2 again. But maybe that's actually a quite practicable solution.
Yes.
I mean, compared to the problems that may arise if you try to bring 2 different level 2 systems together, having a level 1 where the cross-border traffic should really be no problem at all, and the transitions on either side should be relatively straightforward as well. Maybe that's quite a smart idea.
Yes. We consider this serious.
Yeah, and maybe it's a good thing that the Europeans haven't really specified one solution for how to get cross-border traffic. Because if they said, well, look, level 2 needs to connect to level 2, so that's the only solution that's available. Boom. But then if you have problems in practice, in the practical application, then you are stuck. So at least you've got flexibility and you can basically choose which you in the specific application on a specific border, which you think is the easiest solution and the easiest to implement solution.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, it's a timing thing. The cost is probably not too different anyway, but it needs to work. It needs to work relatively fast. If you have to sort out technical problems for a longer period of time, then the project costs will go up and probably haven't been planned for. So having a solution that basically works easily right the first time, basically, I think that's very, very important.
Yes, and also we have another constraint which is not quite technical, but this is also border between EU and non-EU countries, so you need to also fulfill some customs requirements. So in this sense, we also need to see from the operational point of view, because plane is, for example, from Serbia entering EU, then you need to have customs checks, so on. So there are some procedures which must be followed. And in this sense, we are also looking what is, from this operational point of view, easiest procedure, not only technical. So it's really challenging from this reason also. Now probably the smartest solution is that you have a customs check already here on Serbian side, but this now should be agreed with the colleagues from MAV, and this is not only railway issue, but also issue for the border police and so on. So a lot of stakeholders for this, so this is additional constraint because it is border of the EU Schengen border.
Yes. Yeah, this is when it gets more than just technical. Yeah.
Yes.
So you think we're sorting out the signaling problems and then everything is fine, and then not really. There are a few other things to sort out.
You need to take care also about this. But okay, we will find a solution. That I say that the good thing is that the same supplier is on both sides. It will be even more difficult if we have different supplier from the other side of the border. Then it would raise maybe additional problems. But okay, so this is now in progress and in negotiations, but we will find some solution.
So good. Interesting. So as a managing director of a company, you probably do some kind of planning, like some kind of forward planning where you need to think about what happens with your business. Do you want to grow it? Do you want to just stay as you are and keep going in the same way? So what's your plans going forward over whatever period you want to talk about? I don't know, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever planning horizon you have got. What's the future for signaling solutions?
This region, long-term plans are very difficult, but let's say we have some short and mid-term, like couple of years. As I mentioned, sometimes, of course, first there is some kind of indicative plan, for example, for Serbia, which should be further railway projects, especially for the TCS. We also participate in the project prepared for the ministry for implementation of TCS in the 20 years period, so 2022, 2042. And there are some like 10 railway lines where it should be commissioned with some indicative dates also. So based on this, let's say there is some time horizon how this should happen, and so now it depends also on the funding of these projects. In case that these are some kind of European funding, there is always open competition and procurement, and in this case, of course, because this is not just a signaling project, you always have the civil works and others. So we have some partner companies who has the other, let's say, fields of expertise, especially civil works and alignment. And we usually plan with them joint approach for such procurements. It's usually conducted through this IPA mechanism of pre-accession assessments. So we have several partner companies which we also collaborate, and we go jointly on these competitions. Okay, sometimes you win, sometimes don't. But generally, now we are currently, for example, I think in progress in 3 tenders for supervisions on different projects. We have one project for the level crossings here in Serbia, modernization. The other is for some tunnels. There is civil works signaling. Also, the third one is with some measuring stations, which are, let's say, non-safety systems, but they are also kind of let's say, auxiliary signaling systems. So, for example, we are now in competition for these 3 supervision projects with our partners, and so on. We also plan also on these other projects according to this schedule for, let's say, not 20 years, but in a couple of years, there will be other projects for this line south to Belgrade. From Belgrade, there is now this first section. There will be second section, also to the border with Macedonia. We know which projects will be there, and we are preparing mostly from the designs, but there also will be parallel tenders for the supervision usually. So we more or less are competing in both, but then we see which is more convenient for us. We also have a very good cooperation with the suppliers of the equipment, because, when they receive, when the design is finished and they receive the job, they need the technical help and technical expertise from the local companies, especially their first time here. So basically, we were already cooperating with some like Alstom when he had its first installation here. So we are helping them in preparation of this generic and specific software. It was really big cooperation. So we started from the design and ended with the commissioning, maintenance manuals, preparing of the training of the railway staff and so on. So you need to prepare a lot of documents, user manuals, instructions. This should be, on Serbian. You need to check everything is according. So for example, we had very good cooperation with Alstom on one of the projects there. Also, with Dash de Praha, we cooperated here in Serbia and in Montenegro. So also independent from this design stage, we also cooperate with suppliers when they are here. And also we now have done this task of elaborating the detailed design for the Chinese for this third section, which is now in implementation. And so, of course, in all these projects, there will be some old or new players. So we also try to stay in contact with them to help them further in the implementation with each specific project. So basically, these are some kind of plans, let's say the design stage for next railway modernization, and also helping the suppliers in the implementation stage. And the third track, which we now recently started, is this supervision. We for now have one supervision where the supplier is the Bulgarian contractor. And now we are on these 3 tenders, which are now in preparation. So maybe more or less we are present in different fields. Everything except the construction works itself. That's something which quite different, and you need to have the equipment, machinery. So we are not engaged in this. So of course now our, let's say, task will be design and some kind of technical assistance to different suppliers. That are our plans. Of course, we will see. But we have partners with which we jointly apply for this, because there are very few projects where you have only signaling, and so it's always part of some complete modernization. And in such cases, the civil work companies are the leaders because they carry most of the works. And then, but we have some partners who are experienced in the designs, and we usually are doing with them jointly.
Before we close, you were one of the first people who signed up for the virtual CBTC conference that I'm organizing in September, the CBTC World Summit. And for anybody listening who's interested in this, in the post roll after this podcast, there will be more information. Can I just ask you what interested you in this conference, and what made you signing up for it?
Yes, well, the CBTC is a relatively new topic here. last year, it all started last year when I attended one other course from the DB Railway Academy, also in CBTC, and it was interesting. And now, since we have the metro project on the horizon, which should start soon, and we have some contacts and cooperation with Alstom, which should be supplier for this system. My personal intention was to learn more about this, to try to understand, because it's really quite different from the ETCS and other signaling systems. So basically, we will try to catch the rest of the Europe in this area, and that was my motivation. And especially seeing your interesting posts on LinkedIn about the CBTC, about the integration of different suppliers and so on. I really think it's useful because especially in this preparing of the concept of because for now we have this first line in, let's say, in the horizon, but we don't know what will be second, third, who will finance this. Maybe there will be other suppliers, how this will work together, what will be in the OCC and so on. So it's really interesting topic. Your posts were let's say, the trigger for my interest on this system, and I'm trying as a specialist in signaling to know better this system. And I think that you are, what I read from the topics of this conference, I think it is interesting for wider audience. And I also recommended this to some colleagues here. I hope that someone else will apply. But basically, I'm trying to learn as much as possible in some short time, because we didn't have any practical experience with the system. It's nowhere in this region you don't have a metro or CBTC. So I think maybe the closest is the Hungary or Romania, maybe. So we didn't have opportunity to learn more about this. So now I'm trying. I also purchased this Circe book. It's also good, but I think it requires some kind of knowledge for this. You cannot read it as a novice. So I think that first with some very good conferences like your will be, I hope, to gain some basic knowledge and then go to further details with the books and so on. So that was the intention. But let's say it was really, my interest came from your posts where I see that this is, as I understand, there is no interoperability standards like for ETCS, and this can be a big problem. And I don't think that people who are, let's say, here planning procurement in the future, they don't realize that, even for ETCS, you have a lot of problems with interoperability, even with the standards. But here, when you don't have nominal standards, it might be a problem. So basically, I'm trying to find more details and experiences from other countries, especially seeing that in Australia, you have a lot of these systems already in operation, and you have a big experience how to handle this. So I think I'm trying to make a broader picture of the system.
Well, with regards to signaling in Australia, it's funny you mention it, because I'm just about to do a recording for a video series which is called IRSE 10. You may have heard of this. The IRSE under the last president, Andy Knight, they have started a series of relatively short videos, about 10 minutes length, and they call it IRSE 10. And I have been invited to present at IRSE 10 about the developments of the signaling market in Australia. So that's definitely something that may be of interest to you and hopefully to the listeners as well.
Of course.
With regards to my training courses, I've been doing CBTC training for more than 8 years and ETCS training for more than 4 years. And what I noticed over time is that the focus of the training changes slightly. I mean, there are a few technical, which I call fundamentals, that needs to be there. If somebody really starts from zero with CBTC, there are certain things that need to be understood. Certain acronyms, what they mean, key functionalities of CBTC or ETCS, depending on whether you have a CBTC training or ETCS training. But what I found that over time, the focus changed on other things. So not just the technical foundation, but also tips and tricks of application coming from case studies. And more recently, I've done a lot of work in that whole topic of interoperability, and related to that also supply strategy. Because what you just mentioned, if Belgrade now considers to build a metro network over time, we start with the first line, but then there will be a second line, then there will be a third line. What I think needs to be there very much at the beginning of the whole thing is supply strategy, or some people call it network strategy, where you need to consider how big will this network be, how many suppliers for CBTC in this case do you want for that network? Do you want to have the entire network developed with a single supplier? Maybe not, especially not if you do it over a longer period of time. And if you want to have the option for multiple CBTC suppliers, then you immediately walk into this interoperability problem, where all the current mainstream CBTC products from Alstom, from Siemens, from Hitachi, and so on are inherently non-interoperable. So, and in order to solve that, this is where I think a supply strategy needs to be done. It sounds probably bigger than what it is, but it's very important to really be clear what can be done, and then what needs to be done. Basically, how do you structure your network that leaves you the option of choosing different CBTC suppliers over time. And this translated over to ETCS pretty much, where I got all these case studies, experiences from Europe, where people had interoperability problems left, right, and center. And I thought, well, wait a minute. Everybody here in Australia thinks it's ETCS, it's interoperable. So they take it for granted. And this is where I basically raised the warning sign and said, oh, wait a minute. It's not quite that straightforward. Yeah. And it's not to create additional work for a consultant. It's basically just saying, well, be careful here, because the experience from Europe indicates that interoperability can be achieved, but you cannot take it for granted. You need to put some work in. There's a certain path that you need to take to secure interoperability for ETCS. If you don't do that because you think you don't need to and everything will come naturally and automatically, I think that's a mistake. And a lot of people, a lot of projects have woken up the hard way and basically going into final testing or even starting day one of operations, and all of a sudden something doesn't work, and then the whole application doesn't work, and then they fall back into conventional signaling. So these are things where my training courses have really evolved over time, and they are now basically including very different things from what they included, 3-4 years ago, which is an interesting development. And what I'm trying with this conference specifically for CBTC is to, get speakers from all over the world, from different regions. So there's one session for Asia Pacific, where I've got people from Australia, from Singapore, from Hong Kong, from China. Then there is an American session where I'm getting people from North America, from South America. And then there's a third session for Europe and Middle East, simply because the time zones are relatively close, where I have people presenting from this region. And then all the sessions are recorded so that somebody who says, well, the European session is in the middle of the night, or the American session between America and Australia, we have like a 12-hour time difference, which is pretty difficult, to watch things live. But because all of those things will be recorded, they can be viewed at a convenient time during the day as a replay. So and what I'm trying there is not just having any presentation about CBTC. I'm really trying to focus on special topics that are like out of the ordinary. Yeah. So just one example, I will have a presentation from Sydney. Not just generally, are we doing CBTC and Sydney Metro and so on, but what's special about Sydney is that they are having an existing railway line, which is at the moment part of the suburban train network. And this line will be cut out of the suburban train network and will be converted into an unattended train operation, an unattended metro operation. And this is really something that I haven't heard anywhere else in the world, where I thought, okay, well, this is one thing where everybody will say, oh, wow, this is special. This is out of the ordinary. And this is how I'm trying to line up basically all of the presentations. Whether I succeed with each and every presentation, I don't know yet, but at least I'm trying to look at like every specific presentation. Okay, what is special here? What is the certain extra where people say, oh, well, this is not just a standard CBTC. There's something that's special.
Exactly. That is also what I wanted to hear, because here for now we have only planned for this first line, which will be like 7 years. But for later, I think there is no overall strategy, and it would be good to, at least to find out and to present to someone possibilities. Of course, they will decide on their own, but at least to give them some recommendation in very good faith, nothing more. So that's exactly what attracted me to your specific conference, because I think it's not quite straightforward, like just description of the system, but really I hope some practical solutions, problems from the real case studies, which is important. So I hope it will be interesting, and I hope that some colleagues also from the region will attend. I gave several recommendations to people who might be interesting, so I hope there will be someone else from here except me.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, and thank you very much for your time. I just noticed we've already talked for an hour, and this is normally my hard limit for these interviews, not to take them forever, but you were talking so interestingly about a market that I knew very little about, and I hope that was of interest for the listeners as well. Well, basically how you build up a business in the railways, and how you can basically have a team that's flexible in terms of size and also in terms of cost exposure. And and information about the Eastern European market, which I think is very interesting, and there will be a lot of movement over the next few years. Yeah, so obviously funding is always an issue, but that's not much different in Western Europe either, or in other parts of the world. So thank you very much for your time. I wish you all your best personally, and also for your company, and of course for the further development of railways in Eastern Europe, in your part of the world.
Okay.
And thank you.
Thank you very much for invitation, and it's really my first podcast, but I didn't notice that 1 hour passed. It really was a pleasure to talk, and at least we will see for sure at the CBTC conference, and thank you once more for the invitation for this interesting podcast.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So for all the listeners, the usual spiel: if you like it, then please subscribe and tell your friends about it.
Yes,
because the podcast cannot be known by too many people, rather by too few people.
I will share. Okay, yeah.
Well, that was not just for you, Ivan. That was pretty much for everybody else listening. So tell your friends and colleagues about it. And until next time, keep it simple and bye for now.
Okay, bye. Thank you very much. Okay, bye.
Hi, it's Doc Frank again, real quick before you head off. If you are a fan of communications-based train control or short CBTC, there's an event coming up in September that you absolutely don't want to miss. It's the first virtual global CBTC conference. It's called CBTC World Summit 2023, and it's happening on the 20th and the 21st of September. There will be 3 sessions of about 6 hours duration each for 3 different global regions, one for Asia Pacific, once for North and South America, and once for Europe and the Middle East. So wherever you are in the world, one of those sessions will be during the daytime in your time zone, and you can watch it live for the full 6 hours with 6 presentations. The kicker about this is that all other presentations, including the ones from your own session, will be available for replay via recordings. So that means that if the other session should be in the middle of your night, you can still watch it on demand at a time that's more convenient for you and doesn't interfere with your good night's sleep. The conference is available for registration right now at my training portal under docfranktraining.podia.com/summit23. I repeat that, docfranktraining.podia.com/summit23. I'm putting a lot of effort into this conference. It will be an absolute blockbuster event, and I very much hope to see you there. Until then, keep it simple and bye for now. Hey, Doc Frank here, host of the Rebel Conversations podcast. Thank you for listening.